Hello everybody, Andrew Casey at Hypersanitybooks. Today we're talking about writing tips between co-authors, husband and wife. And I think there's a few things to touch on within this video between what successful co-authors have done and where some other challenges do present when co-authoring. This is just presenting some information and hopefully this video can be informative. Otherwise, let's get into it. Number 10. What is a co-author? A co-author can come in some different forms. Some projects may be 50-50, 60-40% split on the workload, and it all depends on the different skill sets that people present to the table. However, in the case of Christina Applegate, most of her projects, including Animorphs, yes, she is the author, that's why her name is on the book, and she gets 95% of the credit. Her husband, he puts in 5% of the work, but he is still a co-author on the project with her because of the contribution that he puts in. Even though it's 5%, it's still a big impact. And the best example is Animorphs. You see, with the example, she had Animorphs being the interest in animals and wanting to make a story for middle grade readers, though her husband had other ideas with the science fiction side, including the aliens and the way that they were designed. So blending some of the story together and collaborating as they did, she still got to be focused on presenting and publishing the books, though he is still a co-author with 5% of the work. Number 9. First book deal. Her first book deal was in 1996 with Animorphs, and getting a book deal, especially for a series and middle grade readers, it's not easy. Even R.L. Stine said with Goosebumps, there's a lot of expectation for the company that you're working for to produce the books. Yes, the royalties and money can be quite handy, though the expectation, it is a lot of stress. Though they're not easy deals to get, especially if it is your first project. So, yes, it was a big commitment. She got married in 1979, and it was almost 20 years later where she took on a career as an author. And her husband, Michael Grant, stood by her side with the whole process. Within this type of regard, yes, there are different traditional paths that you can take, though getting big book deals, especially for middle grade readers, even R.L. Stine says it's one of the difficult paths to take, and it's not always guaranteed. There are other suggestions that he says even some self-publishing paths are not too bad if you are working on middle grade books and looking at doing a series. Number 8. Michael Grant. Michael Grant got his first book published in 2008, and a lot of his books are supernatural fiction, dystopian fiction books for young adult readers. So he likes the older audience, though he doesn't like to go into the adult fiction territory, likes to keep it to a wider audience with young adult fiction. And I notice with looking into his work, I have never read any of his books, I think he has done well, but he's kept to a different schedule where he's producing a book once a year or so. But 2008 is when his career started. He supported Christina Applegate for nearly 10 years until he then worked on a project. And again, he took on 95% of the workload, and he co-authored with Christina to help him fill in different gaps to where the book was needed, or just go through revising with it. Though it does bring to another question. Number 7. Outsourcing. There is a big concern that comes through between credit and outsourcing. When you're outsourcing, you are paying either an employee or someone who is self-employed to solve a problem for you. So there are different people who will do ghostwriting jobs, but they are paid for a job, not for the credit. So that's something to always consider. And Michael Grant talked about this subject. Outsourcing to someone who gives a little bit of information on ghostwriting or whatever else, then expect credit, or outsourcing from one person to the next. And then, so you got person A, person B, who are both expecting credit over just being paid for the job that they did or did not do in this case. So yes, definitely be aware when you are publishing different books. So for myself, I co-authored The Arsehole Who Didn't Want to Celebrate Christmas, with the book, co-authoring was a bit of a 50-50, 60-40 split, both ways, on different various points on how the book was published. It's still in progress, so I can't show a cover just yet, though in all argument to this subject matter, yes, I also outsourced to Damien Hansen, he's written so many books and he's going quite well at the moment with his career, though outsourcing, it's paying to do the job, not for the credit, though I do give the recognition for a job well done. And that's something to think about when you are getting your books edited or published. Who is actually profiting off your work? Number 6, writing conflicts.
Hi, I am Pencilhead.
And I am son of Pencilhead.
We erase crime.
Yes, one of the biggest points is conflicts within your writing and what way you want the story to go. One of the best ways they found a way through working, especially with animorphs, is where they had the biggest differences, is she liked the animals, he liked the science fiction, and sometimes their ideas clashed. And he has said in different Reddit posts and other users that yes, it is almost like getting a divorce, but don't think of it literally.
And now we have Mom's world and Dad's world, and they are very different.
It's just sometimes you got to be in a separate space while she's working on one chapter, he's working on another chapter. And sometimes the collaboration was a bit frantic between different conflicts of ideas on which way for the story to go because of their separate interests and understandings of the subjects that they're working on as co-authors. So there have been some different points that have been quite difficult to co-author together. And when it came to bigger projects and deadlines, there was a lot of pressure put on them to complete the deadline. However, the main way that they suggest to move forward is to keep it's her books, her project, keep the workload towards her to be a lot bigger than what it is for himself, but as a way of resolving through, it was better to go between chapters. And I also found the same with working on The Arsehole Who Didn't Want to Celebrate Christmas. I found between myself and Joe, the best way to go through it was between different chapters and then collaborating back. Because sometimes, especially for the comedy side, she worked better on the book than I did with the drama side. Though there are different conflicts of understanding on what you want to produce. And sometimes co-authoring is not as easy as what people think. Number 5, cancel TV series.
All I know is, now I'm an animorph.
Christine Applegate enjoyed that there was the TV series made off the book she created. She has loved a lot of fans who have approached her to talk about the series and the book series. There's a bit of an appreciation for both, though the series got cancelled due to high expenses, which was a real shame because there was a deeper story with the 52 books, and there were also 10 spin-off books from the Animorphs series. Michael Grant, however, he has been asked, and he has had some interesting responses where, yes, he has actually put it in writing with some other choice words, because producers have the rights over... Scholastic have the rights to different producers and how they're going to produce things. And he said he would like Animorphs to be made into a TV series, a Netflix TV series, and keep it to a bit higher rating, now with mature audiences, just like what the Goosebumps series did. Number 4, limited rejection. Both Christine Applegate and Michael Grant have both said numerous times, especially with Animorphs compared to other book projects, they didn't have too much pressure as far as creative control goes, because there was a certain level of trust that they built with the editing phase. And yes, there is some of the work that had, please explain, please rewrite this. And it wasn't too bad. The editor mostly just asked the questions to help finish the work. And having that creative control without the pressure, they have said that Scholastic as a company did not put too much pressure on themselves to publish the books, though the biggest conflicts were the occasional times with which way the story was going to go. between different creative conflicts. And that's one of the biggest things with co-authoring a book to always consider, is what type of conflicts that you can have for creative control, and even brainstorming different ideas. Sometimes it could be something as simple as a small character flaw or character trait.
You get tipsy at one cocktail party and do one little impression of his parents being murdered, and suddenly he won't return your phone calls.
And it can be something as large as which way the story and narrative is going to go.
Ah, see? Are you ready to die, Batman's parents? Oh, don't shoot! We're Batman's mommy and daddy!
Though, they generally had an idea from book to book, which helped with the process. But again, yes, there were different challenges, but from the company, surprising to hear that with Scholastic they didn't have as many conflicts as what I expected. Number 3, research. One of the things that is quite interesting is when you are writing different books, especially when there are a lot of complications and different things to consider, sometimes new information presented is something that says, oh great, now I've got to go through the book because I've learnt something else that will make the story make more sense. And sometimes that's just creating some overthinking. I have heard more of some other book writing tips to keeping it simple for your story so it's easy to grasp and understand. So sometimes with different research phases or new information presented, it can force a rewrite just in a few things that are presented to make your story have a better flow. And Christina Applegate absolutely said, researching animals, there were different things that she wished she put into the stories after the fact of it being published. And the same with her husband. Different science fiction or science facts that have come forward made him think otherwise with a lot of the books that he has written for the young adult fiction. So yes, working together, sometimes there is a bit of a collaboration between presenting your findings constantly and getting on each other's works, because you're constantly showing each other something that you learnt. Number 2, target audience. Both authors work together and they both write for different audiences. Christina Applegate keeps things to the middle grade authors, as we know, and Michael Grant keeps things to the young adult fiction, and some of his works does have a lot of different coarse language that comes through, creates a different conflict. And again, sometimes there were different challenges that are presented, and it can be hard when you're writing between different genres and you're writing between different target audience. So yes, there is a lot that I've touched on today, but again, it comes back to the same argument throughout the whole video. They don't work on the projects as a 50-50 or 60-40, it's not that black and white. They have someone lead the project and the other assist. And it's the same for himself. He likes the young adult fiction, takes on the project, and he can put out a lot of different information that you can't do for middle grade readers, and then Christine Applegate will assist him. So think about that. If you are co-authoring books, try to think about who's going to lead the project and who is assisting the project. Number 1, separate worlds. Parallel authoring, where one approach is project is looked at, as we said, chapter to chapter, and passed between one person to write so much out, and someone works on another part of the story, and then a little bit of collaboration. And sometimes with parallel parenting especially, it's sort of like a child goes between mum's world and dad's world, and the two worlds do not collide and the two worlds do not connect. They're separate. And in some cases with writing the book, they have talked about being in separate rooms, working on the same project. Also with character perspectives, one of the things between each of the books and different series that they worked on is focusing on who the protagonist is from story to story. And touching back on Animorphs once again, this happened where each book was from the perspective of a different character, except for the last book that I never ended up reading, because the last book, it actually goes between chapters and each character giving a perspective. And that's one book I would love to read. That, however, is another story.